Dear students, welcome back to the class on International Business Communication, session 9. Today we will talk about thought and speech in intercultural communication. And let's move on, let's revise a little bit. Intercultural communication, what is intercultural communication, what is the significance, what is the meaning. I am sure you remember these things. We also need to know what makes us different from each other. Why do we consider ourselves different? Why are we emphasizing so much on intercultural communication? Why are we emphasizing so much on these differences? On the one hand, we say we are the same, we are all the same, but we come from different backgrounds. So, you need to remind yourselves, why is it that you need any training on international business communication and how we are different, so that we can focus on these differences and build on the strengths that these differences afford us. We also need to acknowledge that we are different. We get the same training, we go to the same schools, we do the exact same things, but still we end up being different, and there are reasons for that. And we have discussed some, we will discuss some more today and in the classes to follow. So, let us move on to intercultural interaction. What is intercultural interaction? Talk amongst yourselves. I wish I had a live class, and this discussion would have been much more interesting than it is right now, but I am sure you will just take it from here and carry on with the discussion in your classes. Intercultural interaction is what happens when we begin interacting with cultures that we are not so familiar with. That is intercultural interaction. It is the kind of communication, the kind of perceptions, the understanding we have, what we see, what we hear, what we listen to actively, and we will talk about hearing and listening in another class. And all of this in situations that we are not so familiar with, and many of you will be going into the world taking on the roles of big managers, taking on the roles of you'll manage funds worth crores of rupees or lakhs of or hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars times, and people will be entrusting you with this money and hoping that you will contribute to the building of a global empire. Everybody wants to grow. Everybody wants to be wants to work well with people who are outside of their comfort zones, and intercultural interaction is what happens when we deal with people outside of our comfort zones. This is the interaction that happens when we talk to people we have never seen before, we have never heard before, we have no idea of, and so this is really important, because in business what is important is to sell. It is important to make money using the right ethical methods. Okay, thought and speech. Let us focus a little bit about on this. I am not sure if we have dealt with this before, but we really need to find out how thought and speech are related. So, let us mull over this a little bit. Please discuss amongst yourselves how thought and speech might be connected. What is it that binds thought and speech? Are they connected, first of all? If yes, how so? Excuse me. And of course, after you have had this discussion, we can move on to the next point, and I will tell you how these are connected. We think and then we speak. That seems like the most obvious thing here. But how do we think? What helps us think? Why do we think what we think? What gives us the impetus to think about certain things and ignore other things? Why should we bother to focus our attention on some things and not on others? Why should we bother to focus on anything at all? And how does this translate into speech? And now, going back to the previous lectures, it all depends on the environment. Everything is coming to us from the environment. Everything that we are doing is going back into the environment. The stimuli, physical and otherwise, coming to us from the environment interact with what is already here. They interact with our memory traces, they interact with what we know, they interact with what we feel, and that in turn prioritizes our thoughts, prioritizes our perceptions, gives us an idea of what we should be focusing on and what we should not be focusing on at that point of time. It helps us order our thoughts depending on our external and internal environments. And then we decide, we say, okay, there are few things in the environment. For example, I am sure you can hear this banging in the background, and I choose not to focus on it. I choose not to pay attention to it. I choose to focus on this class. How do I decide that? I have memory traces, I have priorities, I have an internal environment, I have an external environment, and my internal environment says that if I focus on you all, these sounds will ultimately cease to matter. So, that is one way of prioritizing what to focus on and what not to focus on. And how do I decide that? Maybe I have had a past experience with blocking out sounds that do not matter. Maybe I have maybe I have realized that teaching you all is more important than asking somebody to stop that sound. Maybe, depending on the demands of my job. So, these are all internal and external environments that help us decide what is going on in our minds. Now, that is the ordering of thoughts. Let us come to speech. How do we decide what words to use? How do we decide what to say, when to say it? All these things depend on the feedback we have received from our environments since we started sending verbal oral sounds into the environment. We had talked about babies crying, we had talked about learning to speak, we had talked about how we learn languages, how we learn the appropriate usage of languages. Now we are talking about thinking, which is an additional aspect of speaking. We decide what to say, how to say it, what tone to use, when to say things, how much to pause, depending upon the feedback, the memory traces left by the feedback we have received from our environment in the past. Sounds very complicated, but it's not. It's not complicated at all. You need to think that when you send a particular sound into the environment responds in a certain manner. When that response comes to you, you process the response. The response coming to you may not have been intended to be uncomfortable, but you, depending on how you associate that response with whatever you know about such responses, may associate that response with a comfortable or an uncomfortable feeling at the very basic level. Of course, there are so many layers to this. So, at the very basic level, you get an idea that the next time I am in a similar situation, I need to respond like this, or maybe I need to change the way I respond so that when my response elicits another response from the environment back to me, I am not so uncomfortable, or my response was so great that the next time I am in a similar situation, I will do the exact same thing, I will say the exact same thing. These are conditioned behaviors. Speech is also a conditioned behavior. The tone we use is also a conditioned behavior. The words we use in different situations are also conditioned behaviors. And what does this conditioning depend upon? The context. We have talked about the context. It all depends on the context, the environment, the internal and external contexts of the people we are dealing with. All this is influenced by the context. We will deal with this more as we go on in the course, but for now, please remember what I just told you. Another very difficult term, ethnocognitivism. It's hard to pronounce. Ethno-cognitive-ism. 3 parts to it. Ethnicity or ethno deals with our contexts, our environments. Cognitive deals with the way we think, how we process our thoughts, what we learn from the environment. And ism, of course, is the science of all this, the philosophy behind the connection between the environment and the way it influences our thinking, our learning, our training, which is a buzzword in the business industry, and the philosophy behind this connection. The second word here is problem solving. All of you do it, especially business professionals. You're supposed to think on your toes. You're supposed to solve problems like this. You're supposed to give responses like this. So, problem solving and hemisphericity. What is hemisphericity? What hemisphere are we dealing with? Are we dealing with the globe, the earth, or are we dealing with something else? Please talk amongst yourselves. And when you're done discussing that, then at that time please pause this lecture and then move on to what I am just about to tell you. Hemisphericity deals with the hemispheres of the brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. We call people left brained and right brained. And let's look at the title once again. Ethno-cognitivism, problem solving and hemisphericity. Why am I using these big words in this class on business or business communication? What does this have to do with communication? Please talk amongst yourselves and then come back to these slides. The first point here is everyone has the same cognitive components but learns to use them differently through life. That is the first reason why we are discussing this in a class on business communication, especially in the international environment. We all have the same biological structure. Of course, there are minor variations and medical science rests on these variations. There are some things that are common to everybody and there are other things that are different for everyone. Excuse me. Research on cultural difference indicates, that word should be indicates and not indicates, that members of industrialized societies and members of non-industrial societies respond to visual illusions quite differently. Research has indicated that people in industrialized societies, societies that are focused on building things, on industry, on work with their hands, and members of non-industrial societies, industries or societies that are focused on other things in life. I am sure the sociologists and the economists here would be able to explain this much better than I can, and I am sure you have read all this in your classes on economics and sociology. Research on cultural difference demonstrates that people in these two different kinds of societies respond very differently to visual illusions, which is what they see coming at them or coming to them from their environments, what they see in their environments. For example, a person from an industrialized society may not be able to accept somebody taking their time a little casually, may not be able to accept somebody working in a haphazard manner without a plan. Somebody sitting around jotting down a few notes on a piece of paper and calling it a plan for work, it's a visual thing, right? If somebody just jots down things and calls it a plan, and maybe we can focus the camera here, somebody writes, step 1 here, let's not even call it step 1, let's call it ABC over here, and then writes EF here and writes CD over here and writes MN over here and writes GH over here and writes different times. This is supposed to be done at 9 and this is supposed to be done at 11 hours and this is supposed to 1100 hours, this is supposed to be done at maybe 1600 hours, and I will fit these in wherever possible, and at the end of the day I will get my work done. Now, somebody from an industrialized society might find this very strange, and they'll say, well, this is not how a plan works. And the person says, look, I have all the times, I know I need to start at 9, finish at 4 o'clock, and I have all these things that may not be done in a particular order. And that comes across as very, very uncomfortable to a person from an industrialized society. Whereas something like this, AB, CD, EF, GH, IJ. So, starts at 9, 11, maybe 13, 1500 hours, and if possible by 1600 hours this is done. This is a flow chart. These are all hours, times of the day. If I do this, I will ensure that my work till from A to J is done in a systematic manner. This will come across as very, very professional, in quotes, professional, competent, optimum level of functioning visually to somebody who is talking about a plan to finish some sort of work. Now, again, this may come across as uncomfortable to somebody who is trying to focus on several things in the environment. In an industrial society, people will say, when you are at work, you only focus on the work at hand. You do not focus on distractions, you do not do other things. Whereas in a non-industrial society, people will say, we get our work done. It gets done really well. We are able to achieve results, we are able to do things systematically, or we are able to finish the work the way it is supposed to be finished. We follow a different plan, and our plan looks like this as opposed to this. This is done, this is done. Okay. The person says, from a non-industrial society, says, my plan looks like this, and I am able to finish up to n, not only to j, I am able to finish up to n by 1630 hours. You are only able to finish up till j. But again, here in the non-industrial society, people are focusing on the context. They are looking at other things coming in the way, and they have their own ideas in their minds. I am not saying they are incompetent, they just think differently, but these visuals appear very, very different to people from non-industrial versus industrial societies, and people respond very differently to these visuals depending on what they spark off in their minds. Now, we talk about cognitive styles. So, one is the response coming to us from our environments. Now, how do we perceive these responses and how do we start responding to them? We have various cognitive styles. According to Lieberman, 1994, we have 4 kinds, primary 4 cognitive styles that help us function in the business environment. The first, before we move on to this, please think about, please discuss how these cognitive styles influence behaviors in different cultures. In this class, I will keep requesting you to discuss these things in class. I will give you points for discussion in class. I will ask you to do things at home and figure things out on your own. I am not going to spoon feed you as far as possible. So, please discuss these things and I will give you some answers later. The field dependent cognitive style. Field dependent cognitive style rests on the holistic perception of the event. You look at the event in its entirety. Let us take this example. The work began at 9 o'clock. The work ended at 4:30. What happened in the middle, what order the work took is immaterial. The point is that everything from A to N got done. So, you look at the whole picture and not at the system as opposed to this. You look at first AB got done, then CD got done, then EF got done, then GH got done, then IJ got done. We were able to finish the work only up to J, but we did it systematically. There was a process. The process can be replicated. So, that is a different perception. In a field dependent cognitive style, we take everything else, we take this area also into account. All that is happening here. I start my work, somebody's child falls sick, all employees or the senior employees go and help out that person. At the end, they all come back and stay in the office for 2 hours extra and finish the work that they were supposed to go. But somebody's child got sick, you don't have one person designated, everybody rushes to the hospital and says, come on, we'll help you. Or somebody has an accident, everybody leaves their work and rushes to the hospital to find out how their colleague has been hurt and what's happened. I'm not saying it happens in the field independent cultures, but in field independent cultures, these problems are anticipated and people are designated to deal with such interruptions in their work or in their learning. Okay, let's get back to the slide. In the field dependent cognitive style, there is a holistic perception of the event, there is a sensitivity to feelings and opinions of others in the group. Let's think about this. People are sensitive, people realize that human beings are not machines, people realize that human beings have limits. And it's not at the expense or at the cost of the work, but it's at the as an added benefit to being a part of this organization. You also pay enough attention to the feelings of others, you also pay enough attention to the limitations that others may be having, and opinions are also taken into account. In essence, it is perceiving that one is an integral unit of and dependent upon one's context or field. That word keeps coming back, context, it's all about context. Field dependent cognitive style rests on the perception of context or the field as a contributor to the manner in which people learn from their environments. When I keep a book in front of me or when I am undergoing training, I have people teaching me, it if the instructor gets late by 10 minutes, it does not mean that the work will be stopped. Excuse me. If the instructor is not able to go systematically, it does not mean that I will not learn everything. The instructor may jump from point 1 to point 7 and come back to point 5 and may go back to point 3 and then jump to point 10 and in a sense cover everything from point 1 to point 10, but in a different manner, keeping the context, keeping the ideas, keeping the discussion of the participants in the class. And you can apply this to your training environments. As a supervisor, you have to keep in mind the cognitive styles of your employees, and now I have given you the answer to one of the questions I had asked you later. Anyway, think about this. Okay. Field independent cognitive style as opposed to a field dependent cognitive style is when the isolation or rests upon the isolation of the details of the field or context. Interruptions are to be handled separately. The work has to be done as per schedule no matter what the interruptions. The system has to be followed. Things have to go from person A to person B to person C to person D. You do not jump the hoops. And if something goes wrong, we already have a plan, a contingency plan for things going wrong. Your manuals are detailed, your training manuals are detailed, your work manuals are detailed. You have a separate section on what to do if things go wrong. In a field dependent culture, you do not take the trouble of anticipating what can go wrong in your culture or in the environment. You deal with situations as they come and you say, I cannot slot this into a category that can be put up in the FAQs, frequently asked questions. Okay. In a field independent culture, the list of FAQs runs into 5 to 10 pages maybe. I mean, again, that is an approximate figure, do not quote me on that, it is just an approximate figure, but then the FAQs are much more detailed, the questions are anticipated, the responses are given, problems that can go wrong in any job are anticipated, manuals are prepared. Both these systems have merits and demerits. It does not mean that one system is better than the other, but you must realize that these are the two manners in which people learn from their environments. Okay. In the field independent cognitive style, there is we compartmentalize or sequence various elements of the field, whether they are connected or not. We try and connect the various elements in the field that we are in and try and make sense of them. Real life does not make sense to anyone. Real life is not logical, real life is not systematic, real life is not sequenced. But in order to understand real life and deal with the problems in real life, what we do in a field independent culture is we take these elements out of real life and try and attribute causes to them and connect them and sequence them, and then we say, yes, I can see the equation. It started from point A, went through point B, C, D and E. It has to go in that linear manner, okay? And C happened because B happened. C could not have happened just after A. B, there had to be something between A and C. So this is what we do in a field independent culture. There has to be a reason for everything, there has to be a logic behind everything. Excuse me. The logic or the cause and effect relationship may vary from culture to culture. Again, that is how these cultures differ from each other. In a field independent cognitive style, there is lack of emphasis on feelings or emotions. Feelings are supposed to be in a different compartment. Feelings are supposed to be in a different slot. When you enter this office, you punch in, you swipe your card, please leave your feelings and emotions and opinions out of the door. That is what they tell you. When you join a very, very heavy multinational organization, very, very product performance oriented multinational organization, your feelings, your opinions, your emotions, your personal limitations stay out of the door. We will have an HR session to deal with those, but when you come to work here, please leave them out. You are a resource here. Okay. All right. Field dependent versus field independent cognitive style. Brown says, and you must have already understood this, field dependent style refers to high context and field independent style is essentially low context, where the social noise, the environmental noise, not the physical noise, but the perceived additionals from the environment clogging the progress or clouding the progress of any goal or any process that is moving towards a goal is the field independent kind of style. You remove these additional clouding elements and move towards your goal, whereas in a field dependent cognitive style you take all these things into account. For example, again I will give you the example of driving. In a field independent environment, you would probably be taught driving first through a simulator, and then you would be taught on the road and you would be taught to practice driving without any music, and you follow the rules, and if someone breaks the rules, you report them to the police, okay? And you do not break the rules. Excellent idea. I do not break rules when I drive. In a field dependent style, you are told, you may be taught through simulations, but ultimately you are informed that when you are in real life and when you are driving in real life, you will be driving, you may end up driving with people who are talking. This is not completely segregated, and again this is a very crude example, but you might probably be able to relate to it, because I am assuming, especially if this is an undergraduate class, I am assuming some of you may be learning driving or some of you may have already learnt driving, and you are taught that this noise is going to be there. There is no way that we can remove this noise. There may be people talking to you I am not saying it's right. There may be sounds in the environment, there will be horns, there could be cattle on the road, there could be dogs crossing the road, and you have to learn to drive with all these distractions. That is a field dependent cognitive style. Field independent is, if a dog crosses the road, this is the speed you should bring it down to. If a cow crosses the road, this is the speed you should bring it down to. If a truck comes on the road, this is the speed that you should bring it down to. Okay. Reflectivity versus impulsivity. Now, we talked about field dependent and field independent styles of learning. Let us talk about reflectivity and impulsivity. Reflectivity is thinking about a problem, reflecting. I told you that was the first thing you needed to do in this class. You need to think about whatever is being talked about in this class. Taking the time to be completely right than to be partially wrong. Some cultures emphasize on thought, thinking through solutions, taking your time to be absolutely perfectly right than to be even a little bit wrong. And again, I am not saying that one culture is perfectionist and the other culture focuses on substandard styles of learning. Absolutely not. But then these are our preferences. Mistakes are treated rather harshly in a reflective kind of culture, or in a culture that uses or primarily prefers the reflective cognitive style. Gray areas are not acceptable. The solution is either right or wrong. We do not focus on one side or the other. You take enough time and then come up with the right solution. As opposed to this, impulsivity is, let us move on, finish it and move on. Quickly achieve the goal, achieve one goal. If that goes wrong, you have other goals to achieve. Finish and move on, finish and move on. Being partially correct and moving on is more important than taking the time to be absolutely correct and missing out on opportunities for growth while doing so. I had an interaction with an auto rickshaw wala in Ahmedabad. Excuse me. I belong to North India, and what happens in Delhi is, when you one rickshaw wala hits another, what do people do? They get off the rickshaw and start fighting with each other and blaming each other, and then claiming to be the under the wing of some influential person or another. In Ahmedabad, I was sitting in a rickshaw and the rickshaw happened to hit another person, just barely scratched, no major accidents. Both the people got down, scolded each other and said, why did you not take the right turn, why did you not take the right turn? The interaction lasted for less than a minute. They yelled at each other, got back into their rickshaws and drove away. And I asked the auto wala, I said, what just happened? I said, I am surprised and I am glad that you didn't fight with the person, because I would have had to find another rickshaw. I thought I would have to get down and pay this person off and get into another rickshaw. Person said, no Ben, you sit and I will talk to this person. So the interaction was over in less than a minute. Why? The reason that was given to me was that if I can earn a lot more money by driving you to the right place and getting another customer in the time that I would spend fighting with this other fellow. I would fight with him, he would break my head, I would break his head, both of us would be in the hospital, our families would suffer. Why should I waste my time and energy arguing with a person who will not listen to me? I would much rather drive you around, reach my goal. Yes, it wasn't a perfect journey for you from point A to point B, and I am sorry that this happened, but let us move on, let us make some more money. And I was very, very pleasantly surprised to see this, and this is what happens in very, very goal oriented cultures. Now, Ahmedabad is a part of Gujarat, which is a part of India, which is very, very high context, and these things, again I must emphasize, these things do not happen on extreme sides, they are on a continuum. Persons from a high context culture could also be extremely goal oriented. could also be focusing on the emotions of the people, could also be focusing on the context, but they may also be very, very compartmental in their approach to learning from the environment and giving back to the environment. When we learn from people, a person in a reflective culture may want to learn the systematic step by step process for doing something. You do things step by step, you learn everything in its entirety, you learn things only one time, learn it all. In an impulsive culture, they will say, let me first learn the nodes of this process, let me first learn the main points of this process, and even if what happens in the middle is not taken in properly, either by way of my discomfort or I am not paying attention, I can always make up for it, but I need to get as many certifications, or I need to get as many trainings under my belt, or I need to get as many skills under my belt as possible, and then I can spend time polishing and refining those skills later. Whereas in a reflective culture, you learn a few skills, but you are the master or the expert at those skills. Okay. So, in an impulsive culture, the grey areas are acceptable. Again, these things do not happen on extremes. Tolerance of ambiguity, bipolarity of language, right or wrong, good or bad, is also dependent upon context. The language we use, what we say to people, is dependent upon context. We use bipolar language in some cultures. This is right, this is wrong, this is X, this is Y. Now, we were talking about how thought influences speech. How does speech influence thought? You take in ideas from the environment, you take the feedback in from the environment, it stimulates some memory traces, it associates with some memory traces, it gives you, it helps you perceive the context in a certain manner, and then you pick words and you respond to the context in a certain manner. And at that time, the speech is going back into the environment. Now, what you send back into the environment will stimulate a lot more things in the environment, and that will in turn influence what comes back at you from the environment. How you perceive things will depend upon what you are getting from the environment. How you perceive things will determine what you send back into the environment. What you send back into the environment will further stimulate specific reactions from the environment that will serve as stimuli for your further thought process. So, it is a spiral. Let me draw it here. Okay. You start here and you say X. Okay. You say mom. You can get one of the two reactions. Yes, dear. Let's assume. Or yes, dear is comfortable. So, what you do is, next time you want to call this same person, you say mom, and you get a yes, dear. I am not your mom. And then you say dad. You think here. You say dad. Then you get one of the two reactions. And it's the same point that you are coming back to. This is all related to this point that you started from. Let's call this point I am not comfortable or I am hungry. I need help from mom. Mom, yes dear. I am not your mom, dad. So, dad says, yes dear, and then you go back in connection with this point. You say, next time you want something, you say, dad, I'm hungry. It's not mom, but you will probably, let's call this zone where your need will be fulfilled. Okay, and the rest of it is non-fulfillment of need. So, dad says, yes dear, and you say the same thing, but I mean, you say, I need XYZ to fill my stomach. Okay, and then dad says, or this person, you say dad, and the person says, I am not your father. And then you use some other word, some other significant other in the environment, and nanny or grandma or whatever, and the person says, yes dear, and the need is fulfilled. But this is the zone in which your need is going to be fulfilled. These are the words you are choosing based on who can fulfill your need. I am hungry. Who do I call to for help? Mom, dad, grandma, nanny, aunt, sister. When those people cannot fulfill my needs, what do? Call up the restaurant for delivery. Anyway, so I mean, and again that's a joke, but then you start learning, the environment gives you the signals, and those signals help you decide what to do next. Now, this is a very, very simple example. More complicated situations, you say hello to a person, person does not respond. What do? You say hi, person doesn't respond. Namaskar, person doesn't respond. Either the person is deaf, or the person doesn't like me, or the person doesn't understand any of these statements, because you are supposed to respond to a hello to anyone, even off the street, right? But then we start picking different words and different signals anyway. So, that is how thought influences speech. What do? What do I need? I am hungry. I am hungry, I need food. And how do I get my food? I need to call to somebody for help. I can't do it on my own. Okay? So, thought is influencing speech, and when that speech gets responded to, the next signal comes out. So, it sort of goes back and forth like this. Okay? And again, these styles vary, these styles of communication, these styles of interaction with our environments vary. Now, when we are talking about bipolarity of language, we are talking about the right and wrong. You have only two answers, yes or no. I am not your mom, I can't feed you, I will not feed you. You say, mom, I am not your mom. You say mom, and the other person says, what do you need? I know you need something, mom's not here, maybe I can help. So, the answer is not yes or no, the answer is, why are you asking this question? Okay? When we use bipolar language, we use ambiguous words, we use words that can have more than one meaning. I am happy, you are either happy or you are sad. Are you moderately happy? Are you mildly happy? Are you ecstatic? Again, we are trying to categorize. You are happy? Let's go for an ice cream. I don't care how happy you are. You maybe just have a smile on your face, but that smile can mean a million things. Okay? So, that again will be tolerance of ambiguity. You are happy? Great. You are happy? That means you should be doing your work really well today. You are happy, but you may also be exhausted. I am tired, I am not tired. I slept for 8 hours, I slept for only 4 hours. Maybe those 4 hours of sleep was more restful than an 8 hour of unrestful sleep or disturbed sleep. So, your energy may be at its low after an 8 hour sleep, and you may be very, very energetic after a 4 hour deep sleep. That is tolerance of ambiguity. The kinds of words we use and the way these words are interpreted in the environments. Bipolarity, a culture that encourages bipolarity of language encourages cause and effect thinking and linearity. Everything has to have a cause. If you're hungry, why are you hungry? You just ate. Why are you hungry? Have you been working too hard? I'm hungry. Great. What should I feed you? That's what mothers do, right? You say, I'm hungry, and mothers will just, they won't say, oh, you're getting fat, I'm not going to give you anything. No, this time you eat, next time be careful. Or I'll give you something less with less calories. Anyway, that's a different issue altogether. But what we are trying to emphasize here is that every statement needs to have a cause in cultures that encourage bipolarity of language. There is less tolerance of ambiguity where there is greater bipolarity in the structure and meaning of the language itself. A language that has very strict structure, very clear meanings of different words, that is very, very well evolved, may not encourage ambiguity. I would like to do my best and rise to the top ranks of an organization. What do you mean by do your best? Do we have words to define do your best? Maybe we do. I would like to excel in human resources. I would like to excel in the IT stream. I would like to excel as a financial person. I would like to excel as a marketing executive, and ultimately I would like to join the organization as a chief executive officer because I have excelled in all these different areas. Great. What do you want to excel in? In finance. What do you want to excel in? In marketing. When you're talking about human resources, are you talking about employee benefits? Are you talking about employee retirement schemes? Are you talking about employee health? Are you talking about insurance? Are you talking about the HR audit of the organization? What is it that you want to excel in when you're talking about finance? What is it that you want to excel in? Is it forecasting? Is it taxes? Is it legal issues? Is it ethical issues? What is it? Be specific. We keep telling you to be specific. Okay. Now again, these cultures, these situations will determine what you need to be specific about and what you don't need to be specific about. Okay. And in cultures that encourage bipolarity of language, you will find that there is a very high emphasis on being clear in your thought and your speech. Please keep asking what, why, when, where, who, how, and get to the point. Please get to the point. Please keep chipping away at the ambiguity, at the multiple interpretations, and get to the point. Okay. So that is bipolarity of language. We get to the point, we chip away all the extra stuff, we have lesser ambiguity or no ambiguity as far as possible in what we are saying. Cultures, other cultures tolerate ambiguity in learning, especially in learning. I have taught you formula A, you must remember formula A only. Cultures that tolerate ambiguity will say, I have taught you one of the few formulae. Find out what the others are. I know what the others are. You ask me, I will give you 50 of them. But I do not have the resources, or I do not believe in giving you patches. I do not believe in giving you a solution for every problem you may come across. So, I will give you this broad solution. I expect you to adapt the solution as and when the situation arises. Life is full of grey areas. Take one part of one formula, another part of another formula, and see if it works. If it works, great, write a paper about it and make it public so that people in bipolar cultures can add it to their repertoire. Okay? All right, word of caution. These systems are not mutually exclusive. These systems exist along with each other. They influence each other. For example, a high context culture may be bipolar and field dependent at the same time. And how does this happen? I draw things from the context. I draw things from the environment. Okay. A culture, reason for the example on the previous slide, a culture may be field dependent and highly contextual, but it may have the vocabulary to define shades of grey in the environment. Eskimos, they have 50 names for snow. Snow, sleet, ice. I know of 3. Eskimos, people who live in very cold climates up in the tundra, have about 15 names. I could be wrong, but they have lots of names for just snow, the icy stuff that drops from the sky. So, but they are very, very high context. Other cultures, very, very field dependent, depending on the context, what happens, what doesn't happen, and draw meaning from the context, but when it comes to their work, they are very systematic, very, very cut and dry. Now, you must realize that cognitive styles and cultural behaviors rest on continua rather than on extremes. We have some cultural differences in problem solving, linear and direct. For example, the English follow the system, tangential and semi-direct, for example, the Semitic, circular, for example, Asians, circuitous, example, Romance cultures, and combination of direct and circuitous, for example, Russians. And I want you to think why these approaches to problem solving are being taught to you, what these approaches are, and why these are being taught to you in a class on international business communication. And we will stop here and we will continue in the next class. Thank you.